Let's go! Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Kill Stream. We're here. Everything is set. No more songs. Can you believe that? All right, now let me unmute this tab so we can hear the participants. Nick Fuentes and Styx. They really need no introduction. Two legends here. Very glad to have them both here this morning. Hope all the tech, I think everything sounds good and all that. You've seen a lot of these, I hope you have at least. I don't do a lot of talking during them. I do have, like 5 questions here. More substantial questions written by my China expert, Nady Bakes, and I will intersperse those throughout. But for the most part, it's going to be participant-driven because that's how I like to do these. And people don't come to see me talk during these. They want to see these two talk. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let you start off, Nick Fuentes. We're here talking about China, basically how dissidents in the U.S. should view China, approach China, and it could go a bunch of different places. But I'll let you start off proceedings here.
Okay, well, give me 1 second. Let me just get rid of Telegram. I keep getting these.
That's cool.
You ever get these notifications on Telegram every 10 seconds? So I just got to get rid of that. Okay, well, first of all, I want to say thank you, of course, Ethan Ralph, for hosting this. Thanks, Styx, for being here. Me and Styx were just chatting. It's been, I think, like 3 years since we've had a conversation at all, since we've even talked, since we had our last debate. So it's good to speak with you again. Always a pleasure. And I guess we'll just dive in because I've been eager for this debate. This is a very important conversation, very important topic. And I've talked about this a lot on my show. I know Styx has talked about this a lot on BitChute. I've watched a lot of your videos to prepare for this. And so, for my opening statement, I guess about China, I would say this. I think it goes without saying that China is the #1 geopolitical rival and foe of the United States of America. And it will be for the 21st century. That much is not disputed. It's really more about how China concerns us as American dissidents in the United States, which is the question at hand. And so, like I said, I've covered this on my show at length and specifically covered a lot of the anti-China hysteria, anti-China fear-mongering, and general anti-China posture of the American regime, as it pertains to China's rise economically and militarily, specifically in just the last 5 years, I guess you could say, with the election of Donald Trump, this has become in vogue. This is really the new consensus. For a long time, conservatives pointed out rightly, I think, that our government and the American regime was naive to the threat of China or ignored the threat of China. And, even neocons, even never Trump conservatives, liberals will acknowledge that it was Donald Trump that came in 2016 and changed the consensus. It was really just him acknowledging that China was, they were taking advantage of us economically and so on, that, suddenly the American regime started to go all in on the anti-China stuff. So I'll say that my position on China is that insofar as the American regime is the enemy of the American people and American dissidents, a rising China, which is growing more powerful relative to the American regime and in absolute terms as well, that is a good thing for us. And I want to be careful when I say us and strictly define my terms here. When I say us, I mean American dissidents. I mean specifically middle American radicals. You could say American whites, American conservatives. A rising China is good for us, the real historic American nation, the American people, and the political faction that represents them. A lot of people will conflate who the we is. They say that the essence of politics is the us versus them distinction. And too often people conflate who we really are. They'll say things like, we need to fight China. We need to stand up to China. China is going to come after us. And we have to be careful about who we're defining as us and them. China is rising against not the American people, but against the American regime. China is a threat to the American regime. It's the American regime that is standing up to China. It's the American regime that is antagonistic towards China, not us. And it's important to make that distinction because the American regime sees an enemy in China, just like the American regime sees an enemy in the American people. And you look at our top military brass, Department of Defense, Pentagon, and these people talk about the Americans that were at the Capitol on January 6th and Trump voters and white identitarians and say that they're terrorists. And then they go and they say that China is running concentration camps and, they're acting like Hitler in East Asia. And I think that, of course, the overlap there is that, well, both America and China have an enemy in the American regime. So, insofar as the American regime is the number one greatest threat to American dissidents, and insofar as China is a threat to the power and the global hegemony of the American regime, a rising China is good for us, the American dissidents. And, that's a summary of my views. I'm sure we're going to flesh out all the specifics, but I think that's a good place to leave it off for my opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Go ahead, Styx. It's your turn.
All right, I would say first and foremost, you've got to understand that a lot of the problems that are perceived of in the Western world, and I think on that we don't even necessarily disagree, are either China-like or China-sponsored. The idea that China is some sort of a help or an ally to U.S. dissidents makes absolutely no sense. The sort of excessives and problems that we see in the United States, and there are many, I don't deny that, towards people who are outside of the mainstream, regardless of their particular viewpoints, are even worse in China, or again, are sponsored in part in the West by China. We see U.S. corporations that have outsourced to China, trying to lean on athletes, trying to lean on workers, and so forth. We see certainly critical race theory, which is probably the biggest thing that people are talking about, at least at the moment, because of the Virginia election, is sponsored in part by China. There is Chinese propaganda that is literally pushing it in the Western world. We see a situation where all of the problems and excesses that you and I both understand, censorship, etc., are either worse in China or are pushed in part by them. Chinese ties to U.S. businesses is the problem. When we look at the masturbation, I've termed it, in the Western world, we have a real good doppelganger of that if we look even back 2 or 3 decades in China. Now, that was about air pollution, not about anything stylistic. It wasn't a magical panacea for COVID, which, again, was created in part by China, but it exists. China literally about 5 days ago banned Let's Go Brandon. You know that rap song that was created that was trending on Apple? They banned that from TikTok for disinformation. Now, how is China based? How is it better than the West? What I would say is this. The same problems, the same fundamental central problems exist both in China and in the West. That's fairly clear. The difference is in the West, if you anger the government or you criticize the government, you don't get taken to a re-education camp. The economy, while it has many, many problems, is not set up to fail like China, which has $5 trillion just in private development debt at the moment waiting to blow up in its face. China is a paper dragon. I've said this for years. We saw their stock market shocks years ago. They managed to recover from that in part, but then they had to do a lot of debt spending. They're in the same boat as the Western world. The other part that I would say, at least economically, is that China is reliant upon its ability to export to the Western world. Just the other day on Xinhua News, which I don't know if you follow, but I assume that you do, they were praising the WTO. They were praising the World Trade Organization and saying, well, multilateralism is a good thing. Essentially, we support globalism. Now, you're America first. You're Nick Fuentes. But you're arguing in favor of China, or at least Chinese-style policies. I don't see that as very America first. I see this as America last. I see a situation where in the Western world, we're capable of speaking out. We're capable of agency. We're capable of actually changing things. The problem is that under a Chinese model, you're not capable of changing things. If the government of the United States says there's going to be a vaccine mandate, businesses sue, states sue, we've got a 10th Amendment, individuals sue, and then things play out in the court. There's the possibility of blocking that authoritarianism. In China, if you disagree with state policy, you end up like Alibaba's founder, and you end up in a re-education camp for a month. There's the difference. They don't have that hope. They don't have the possibility of that kind of agency. It's been stripped from them. It's already a tyrannical system. They're trying to export that tyrannical system to the West, and it's not China versus the Western world. These Chinese people here, the Chicoms, the literal communists, are standing against imperialism. No, they stand for imperialism. They just want it to benefit China more, which is why they have a base in Nicaragua, along with their failed canal. It's why they're in Djibouti. It's why there's the String of Pearls. It's just as imperialistic and globalistic. The difference is that they don't have the projective force and keep making mistakes because central planning doesn't work as well.
Yeah. Okay. So are we just going to do Ethan back and forth?
Yeah, just go back and forth, and then I'll bring my question in after you guys talk for a little bit.
Okay. I like that term, CHICOM. I'm a CHICOM, and I would say.
Oh no, I don't say that you are. I'm saying that you are siding with their ideology.
Yes. And I would say more specifically, it's not just China first, it's the People's Republic of China first, just so there's no ambiguity, just so there's no confusion. Those Taiwanese dogs, Western puppets. No, I'm People's Republic, Communist Party of China first. Now, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic and silly there, but you covered a lot there. I'll say in the first place, it is important to compare the systems of America and China, but honestly, that's really less relevant. I might agree with you that the Chinese system is, well, I don't think there's any question. The Chinese system is more totalitarian. Absolutely.
Well, there we go.
As far as censorship goes, as far as, the treatment of dissidents in China, I think we're in agreement on that. But
isn't this a debate about dissidents in the first place?
Yes.
Well, so how would a system that's more totalitarian benefit them?
Let me get to that, okay? Let me get to that. So I agree with you that it's slightly more authoritarian. I think, though, that if you're trying to say that the United States is better, I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Is it marginally better? Maybe. You say, well, if you have the wrong opinion, you won't be dragged to a re-education camp. Well, I wouldn't be so sure that that's going to be the case within 5 years. And I would also say that there's a lot of other things going on too. I'm on a no-fly list. The Fed sees $500,000 from me. There's really nothing I could do about it. I'm debanked. I've had my checking accounts, business and personal, banned by banks. I'm banned from every payment processor. Banks ban me from processing payments through payment processors. I'm banned from all the social media platforms. I'm sure, you're very familiar with the online censorship. So, I will say that on a technical level, is China more authoritarian? I don't think there's an argument there. Yes, I think they are. I don't know if that'll be true for very long. I'll also say that I don't know that the differences are really that important. I think it's almost naive to make the case that China is much better. I would also say that their authoritarianism is qualitatively different because, they're authoritarian and they're probably more coercive, but toward what end? In America, the coercion is directed at this very toxic, progressive, liberal ideology. So, when you're being put on the no-fly list or, you're being deplatformed or debanked or whatever, it's because you love America too much. In short, it's because you talk about Jewish power. It's because you talk about white identity. It's because you are proud of being white. It's because you're proud of your country. You're proud of your ancestors. And maybe you're too chauvinistic about it, or maybe you're too prideful about your identity. People are not being dragged to concentration camps in China because they're too proud of their identity. And so that's a very important qualitative difference between the systems. You might say that, yes, the Chinese system is more severe, and that's because it's the East. China is a much more hierarchical society. It's one that it definitely rewards deference as opposed to individualism, collectivism as opposed to, individual expression. But when it comes to these two different systems, the important difference is, well, what are the principles underlying the authority? In China, they're upholding Confucian principles, traditional Chinese principles. They're nationalistic to the point of like Han, ethnic Chinese supremacy. In America, you're being punished, albeit not to the same extent, but you are being punished severely because you don't hate yourself. You don't hate your identity. You don't hate your country.
I don't hate myself, and other than algorithmic demotion on YouTube, I'm doing just fine.
Well, so, I'm not. And there's other people too.
Then you're a rugged individualist. But in China, they wouldn't have frozen your bank account. They would have confiscated every penny.
You gotta make my point, okay?
Well, let him get in and finish your point, and then let him get in. Thanks, Nick. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I guess we could take these because you covered a lot of ground there, but I'll just say in the first, to summarize, I don't actually think, because we'll get into how this pertains to dissidents in China and America. I don't think it's super relevant to compare the systems. I will say, though, China's social credit system, while more severe, definitely rewards, or I should say punishes things according to a different principle than America. And I would say that those principles are superior. I would say that the principles underlying our system are inferior. And I would say that if you think the American system is much better than China, I think that's naive, especially when you look at not yourself, but I mean, the real edge cases like myself or Andrew Anglin or Alex Jones or Laura Loomer, and, not just the retaliation that they get directly from the state, but the retaliation they get from private companies, from NGOs, from, the so-called woke mob. The whole society kind of plays a role in that. So,
but none of you people have stopped talking. You're just not on the same platforms. You're helping to innovate. See, here's the thing. If you get suppressed in the United States, it can be shitty. It's shitty for me when I get algorithmically demoted. It's shitty for you when you get censored. But you're capable of going to a different platform, making your case, putting your material out there. There is a chance that you are heard. You're heard by probably tens of thousands of people at least every single day just on your own website. If you are in China and you are a dissident, because this is a debate, I guess, about the role of dissidents and the various kinds of nationalism, you don't get to go to a different site because there is no other site. The government looks over everything. I found it very funny you mentioning Jews. When you talked to Robert Barnes, actually, in your interview, didn't you say something akin to Israel spying on the U.S. and then selling secrets literally to China?
Yes.
Did you point that out explicitly? So, and then you're talking about Laura Loomer, who happens to be Jewish. I don't think, in the broad ideological sense, necessarily is a fan of yours, at least on that particular token. What are you talking about? And by the way, if China continued to grow, and I don't believe that they will, because they've got various economic issues, we can get into them potentially separately. If China continues to grow, it's shown imperialistic tendencies in the Spratlys, in Djibouti with its base there, Nicaragua Canal / base, etc. They would eventually be sucking the cock of Israel just as hard because there's money to be made in it. Don't believe for a second that the Chicoms want anything other than money. They're communist in name. The free market facade that they have is set up to entrap Western businesses. They love Western money. They have no problem with it. They just want to subjugate it on the moral level. That's all they want. China ultimately is not a friend to any dissident movement in the Western world. Again, we can look at TikTok, a Chinese app. Now, it's cast off as a spyware app. Let's let that go. It doesn't even matter. They're banning Let's Go Brandon. So keep this in mind, everyone. Let's Go Brandon is allowed on Apple. It gets kicked off YouTube for medical disinfo. Elsewise, even the big tech sites don't care. It's become a chant at sports stadiums that in China, if you do that sort of thing, you get put in the gulag. Meanwhile, TikTok bans it. No, you're not allowed to say that. Why do you think that is? If you want to support Chinese nationalism, you should just become a Biden supporter like Richard Spencer, because Beijing Biden will definitely bring you closer to it with more and more centrality and masks on everyone and more misery for everyone.
Okay, so, it's funny you say, well, in China, they spy on everybody. It's like in America, they spy on everybody. In America, we have the NSA.
No. That's not what I was saying. I'm not even focusing on the TikTok spyware application.
No, you said earlier, you said in China, you said in America, I still have a platform. In China, there's no other site, and they spy on everybody. In America, they spy on everybody.
No, I explicitly said there's just no other platform. I didn't mention spying. You're spied on in the United States. Say that. No, you're spied on in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that.
You're spied on.
The difference is but that has nothing to do with deplatforming, and it certainly has nothing to do with whether China's good for dissidents.
It has to do with political control and dissent. Absolutely, it does. I mean,
in the United States, you got your bank accounts. In the United States, you got your bank accounts frozen. In China, you would have gotten them confiscated and ended up in a goddamn gulag. You wouldn't be talking to me right now. You wouldn't be talking here on the kill stream.
Yeah, I know that. And we agreed that China is marginally worse. But like I said, you're naive.
It's naive
if you think we're not headed in the same direction. And if you think that things are so much better, okay, can I rebut?
Hold on, gentlemen. Wait, gentlemen. I like to
You just made my point.
Wait, Styx, hold on, man. Hold on. I like to let it go, but every once in a while I get so heated that we can't, get people's ideas out there. Go ahead, let Nick get his thought out, and then you can respond. Go ahead.
So, in the first place, of course, America spies, and the relevance for that is that is political control. When they can spy on your checking accounts, when they can see, Apple talks about they're going to use AI to scan everybody's iCloud and everything. This is very relevant. When DHS says they're going to hire private contractors to circumvent the laws to embed themselves in private group chats and then go after those people with the federal law enforcement, with FBI, based on private contractors turning over information from private group chats that they act as CIs in to the feds. Of course, that's an extension of political control against the dissidents. And, when you say, well, you still have a platform, this reminds me of back when I had Twitter. Leftists would always say, censorship isn't real. You're still on Twitter. It's like, yeah, and I won't be for long, and I'm banned on everything else. And I would say the same thing. I mean, you tell me, well, you have another site. Yeah, well, probably not for long. Because, again, if you look in the edge cases, like Daily Stormer and 8chan, those are sites that are banned from Cloudflare. Those are sites that are banned from nearly every domain registrar. They're banned from every payment processor. They were talking about earlier this year, there's this consortium of 14 of the world's largest telecoms companies came together after the Christchurch shooting a few years ago. And they came out with a letter earlier this year saying that they were particularly concerned after the Capitol, after 1/6, saying they were particularly concerned with how white nationalists and other dissident actors in America are gathering not on the platforms, but on websites at all, on the internet. And so I think ultimately where they're going to go is down the same path as China. I mean, the writing is on the wall. They ban everybody from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm banned from all of it. I'm banned from almost every platform. You don't think the day is going to come when they take Telegram off the App Store? You don't think the day is going to come when they ban dissidents from even having websites? I mean, who knows if that's going to happen or how long it's going to take, but certainly that's a trajectory. I don't think anybody should be saying, hey, America's so great because, if you get banned from literally everything, you can build a custom site on a hidden server and, go from payment processor to payment processor, et cetera. Just to give you an example, we're trying to do these anti-vaccine rallies in America, which you said we have such a big free speech right to speak out about. We've tried to get permits for rallies in public places, like at the Illinois State Capitol and in New York City, we're trying to get permits. This happened ever since 1/6. Now, whenever you try to get a permit to go to like a governor's mansion or a state capitol, they ask you for insurance. You have to have insurance to do a rally. Then you go to literally every insurance company and they don't cover you. We're trying to get a general liability policy for my nonprofit and we can't find one company. We even have an insurance agent who's a friend of ours who says, we support what you do. We can't find one private insurance company that will give us a general liability policy. And that's not even to speak of insurance companies that will cover specifically rallies. They don't cover political rallies anymore. And it's like, these are the forms of censorship. Yeah, they're not dragging people to concentration camps. I think we established that from the beginning. It's not as bad, but don't kid yourself. You're naive if you think America's this free and open society. Certainly it isn't. And it's trending, of course, in the wrong direction. But by the way, really, all of this is notwithstanding the central point, which is this, and this is maybe to get to the relevance of the debate. And by the way, you made this drive-by remark about Laura Loomer got censored, therefore Jewish power isn't real. What is that, a joke?
That's not what I said.
Well, I think that was somewhat of an
You brought up Loomer. I didn't bring her up. You brought her up immediately after talking about Israel and Jews.
You made some drive-by shot about, you talk about Jewish power, but Laura Loomer is banned, and Israel
I never said that.
Tech to China. It's like, okay.
You said that in your debate with Barnes. Now, can I please respond at some point?
Well,
because you're making your point.
But then we got to get into how this is relevant, because this is not, and I said this earlier, I said it's really not even relevant. It's not about a nationalism. It's about American dissidents and how China benefits them. So
you brought up Loomer initially, along with Alex Jones and others. What I would say is this:
cases of censorship.
Okay, that's wonderful. What I'm saying is this: you're almost making my point for me. You're talking about the United States going off in the wrong direction and making a comparison to China while you're supporting the concept of Chinese nationalism. It's almost beyond words why you would think that was a smart idea in a debate, number one, and number two, why you would think that was politically relevant.
But they're not censoring because they're trying to be like Confucian. They're not doing that as like censorship.
Neither is China. That's all. That's a bunch of horseshit. China's not doing it out of some spiritual bullshit principles. China's doing it for money.
Just like America.
For money.
You can't say censorship is a Chinese principle. Censorship is
when did I say that?
Is neutral. You said,
when did I say that?
You said I'm in favor of Chinese nationalism, but you complain about censorship. It's like that's a non sequitur. It does not follow.
Chinese censorship is objectively worse. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it just hasn't impacted you as much because you're not on the Chinese intranet. If you were a Chinese citizen, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. That's the
because
whole
I could talk about, I wouldn't be censored in China because I would be talking about white identity and I'd be talking, of course.
No, you'd be Chinese and you'd be talking about Chinese identity.
I'd be supporting China. I'd be supporting China and I wouldn't be censored for it.
So you'd be a bootlicker.
No, I would be a nationalist.
You'd just be replicating what was said on Xinhua News.
I would be a nationalist.
You wouldn't have anything dissident to say. So why is this a debate about dissidents?
Because China, here's why this is a debate about dissidents. I mean, notwithstanding the non sequitur.
Can I make one other point really quickly? Because you sounded exactly like Richard Spencer there for a minute, talking about businesses in the United States being regulated, etc. But the difference is in the United States, you are capable of waging a legal battle against the government. You may not win, and I've pointed out many times it's lopsided in favor of the government. It's not naivete. It's lopsided in the favor of the government, but you're capable of waging that fight. You are capable, if you have the fortitude, to at least try. You can't in China. Their top billionaire, the richest man in China, got taken off to a re-education camp for a month because he questioned their central policy with regards to certain business regulations. What does that mean for the average dissident? Well, you're not going to find many in China because, well, you will, but they'll be in gulags. In the United States, dissidents like you and me talk on YouTube. There's the difference. It's as clear as night and day.
Are the gulags coming though, Styx? I mean, do you know? I mean, what do you say to that? We're on that track.
That's literally another point that I would like to make. You're predicting that we will be China-fied, but you're talking about China as though it's a good thing, like an example to go after because of the vague ethno-state model you perceive them of having. You're talking about all these terrible things that China does, and we're moving towards them, and you're naive if you think that we're not. Exactly. And I oppose them. I'm not in favor of those Chinese policies. Chairman Cheng will fail. China will fall. I'm not in favor of those policies.
What I said earlier.
What are you talking about, dude?
What I said earlier is that if you look at the qualitative differences between the censorship regime, you can't just say, well, China censors, America censors, therefore America's China-fied. America would be China-fied if the censorship was predicated on national self-interest,
but it's not in China either.
The self-interest of the people. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. The Chinese government is corrupt and so on, but I think you're being a little bit willfully ignorant about what I'm saying. In China, they're censoring people that are opposing the government. In America, they're censoring people that are opposing the government too. But in America, what is the regime? The regime is BLM, LGBT, trans, it's all that. So when America bans you from Twitter and those things, okay. When America bans you from Twitter, it's because
Democrats have been taking billions of dollars from Chinese slush funds since the 90s.
That's correct.
Don't pretend that China doesn't have a role in that.
Okay, thank you. In America, when you speak out against the government, you're speaking out against sexual deviancy, you're speaking out against replacement migration. Those are the things that get you censored. In America, censorship regime, sure, but that's what is predicated on. In China, nobody's being censored because they say, I'm proud to be Chinese. I'm Chinese. Chinese are the best in the world. China #1. You're not censored for that. In America, you are. If you in America say, I'm proud of my ancestors. I love Robert E. Lee. I've got the battle flag. I've got, I love George Washington and those things. That's what's being shut down in the curriculum. That's what's being censored. That's what the lynch mobs are about. And so if America were China-fied, I don't think China-fication is they have digital censorship. China-fication would be they have this kind of like this nationalism. They have bordering on jingoism. It's like they're chauvinist, bordering on like ethnic supremacy. That would be China-fication if they were censoring on those grounds. And I said, yeah, Chinese censorship is a little bit worse, but it's important what they're censoring. At least the regime in China, nominally, if not perfectly actualized, nominally they are for the Chinese people. They're celebrating their Chinese traditions and culture. In America, we have an elite which is parasitic, and I guess all elites are parasitic to some extent, I'm sure you'd agree. But we have an elite that's parasitic, hostile to the idea that nations even exist, hostile to the idea of America. So it's completely different. And to get to the point, to finally arrive at the point, you say, well, it's about dissidents. It's not necessarily, or dissent. It's not even necessarily about dissent. It's about us as dissidents. That's why I said it's so important that we define who the us is. In America, we dissent against the American government. In China, Chinese dissidents dissent against the Chinese government. America backs Chinese dissidents, like the Hong Kongers, like Taiwan is basically a bulwark of resistance against China. We support the cause of the Uyghurs and so on. Why? Because the dissidents in China threaten the stability of China. The dissidents in China challenge the Beijing. They challenge the government. So America, being a rival power, backs them in the same way that America backs the Russian dissidents, and the same way that Russia harbors Julian Assange. Russia supports American dissidents and harbors American dissidents because it undermines America's moral credibility, moral legitimacy in the world, and it's supporting actors that challenge the American regime in Washington, D.C. It is for the same reason that a rising China benefits us, because if China is an adversary to America, then American dissidents become China's friend. The reason they say that Russia, it's true. The reason that they say Russia backed Donald Trump is because, I don't think that happened, but there's some truth in this. The reason they say that is because Trump wanted to break apart NATO. That is something that Russia wants.
So Nick, do you have a TikTok channel?
No, I got banned from TikTok. But TikTok was bought out by an American company. TikTok was bought out by an American company. Remember when Trump said we're going to ban TikTok from America unless they sell to an American holding company?
TikTok is governed in part by Chinese ideology, Nick.
Oh, Chinese ideology, but I believe they're owned by an American holding company, right? Didn't Trump say that he would ban TikTok unless they sold it to an American company?
No, that's not real.
Jurisdiction matters, Styx. Yes, we just got done talking about civics. Jurisdiction matters. Oh, it's under American jurisdiction. And anyway, there was a whole row about this. There was a row about American control over TikTok. So to say that TikTok is a form of Chinese, they censored you anyway. It's like TikTok is beholden to American regulators. TikTok is beholden to pressure from American companies. If anything, you're proving my point. So, TikTok is definitely, TikTok is definitely influenced by the West, the same as certain Chinese firms can be influenced by U.S. interests because they're all globalist. Again, Xinhua News was congratulating the WTO just earlier today, talking about how wonderful globalism was. These people are all interconnected. The ghost, the boogeyman of Chinese nationalism as being something that's ethnic, number one, is completely wrong. They're doing business in Africa. They're branching out into Nicaragua. They're building roads and shit in Serbia and in Pakistan. Where's the ethno-nationalism here? They're world policing, or at least projecting as much as the West. And by the way, no, TikTok is a Chinese company. It is still Chinese spyware. It still operates on the same principles. The fact that there would be an American holding company for an element of the company doesn't make it less Chinese. And absolutely,
and that's the reality.
Because
no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Because we're talking about jurisdictions here. We're talking about state actors.
That would be like saying that YouTube is a Chinese. That would be like saying Google is a Chinese company because Google built a browser and put it in China.
In America, because Google's an American company owned by Americans, subject to American law.
That's not the headquarters. It's a holding company.
Okay, Alphabet, whatever.
Yeah, Rumble is a Canadian company, and they've got a headquarters now in Florida. They're building one in Sarasota. That doesn't mean that they're not also a Canadian company.
You're not arguing in good faith.
It's the same thing.
That TikTok is subject to American jurisdiction is irrelevant. They're Chinese because they were founded by Chinese.
No, the Let's Go Brandon song, how do you know that was banned because there was an American holding company and not because the Chinese wanted it? Because they're great friends of Joe Biden. They always have been. They love
Why
his
do you
son.
think that is? Why do you think that is? If TikTok is owned by Oracle, which is big tech, which contracts with the federal government, you don't see why
there's a similarity here.
Let's Go Biden or Let's Go Brandon?
How do you know? Do you have
How
their
do we
internal
know?
papers?
It's because
Do you have their internal emails?
no, of course
Or
not.
maybe
But
it was because
you can't
people
say
were
that it's because
criticizing
of
their golden boy in the White House.
Chi-Com's banned. Let's go, Brandon. They don't care. They don't care if people say let's go, Brandon.
It's the same thing as Rumble. A Canadian company puts up a headquarters in Florida. All of a sudden, some of their content becomes subject to Floridian and U.S. federal law. That doesn't mean it's not a Canadian company founded by Canadians. TikTok is a Chinese company founded by Chinese people with a holding in the United States, which partially regulates them according to U.S. law. But when they ban something, you can't, honestly, in good faith, with logic and reason behind you, you can't say, well, it was obviously because of the U.S. branch of this firm.
Yeah,
it was obviously because of
an American
that. It couldn't be that the Chinese
dissident.
No, the Chinese would never bristle at the idea that their golden boy in the White House would be okay, ridiculous. But
let's get on to that subject, because you keep saying, you said Beijing, Biden, and their golden boy in the White House. How come then the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is saying that we're going to go to war over Taiwan? How come our UN ambassador is saying we're going to go to war over Taiwan? How come we're over there antagonizing them over Taiwan? That
wasn't said. Well, that wasn't said.
That's the first time.
No. What they said is that they would if Taiwan was invaded because we have a defense treaty with them.
Yeah, and by the way, this is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. This is the first time,
and true.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
this is the first time.
You're right.
Yeah. So Beijing, Biden, his DOD and his State Department is saying for the first time we are willing to go to war to keep up our defense alliance.
And do you know what that's called? That's called
Taiwan.
bluster. That's called bullshit.
Well, I thought he was Beijing
bluster.
Biden. I thought he's Beijing Biden. Why is he blustering with the Chinese? Shouldn't he be bending? And by the way,
why did he end the trade struggle with China that Trump began? If he hates China so much, why did he end the trade war against China?
The tariffs are still in place.
Okay, why did he end an attempt to extend those tariffs that Trump?
Oh, he didn't end it. He just didn't. He's just not going further. Maybe because there's a giant supply chain crisis. But you acknowledge yourself that.
So he cares about the supply chain crisis. Then why is he also trying to fire a bunch of longshoremen with his OSHA mandate? See, nothing you're saying ultimately makes logical sense.
No, because what you're saying are non sequiturs. To say, and that's obviously deceptive because you said, oh, well, Biden ended the trade war. And you just said, well, actually, no, he didn't. He just didn't extend it like Trump had planned on doing. But the tariffs are still there. The defense secretary threatened war over Taiwan. What's more, you look at the Atlantic Council, they're talking about Chinese influence. You look at the State Department, they're talking about Chinese influence for the first time. This is in the last year.
Your entire debate so far goes down to misrepresenting what has been said by various people. War was not threatened with Taiwan.
It's the opposite. You said that Biden ended the trade war. He didn't end the trade war. The tariffs are still there.
He's not fighting any trade war.
The tariffs are still there. Are they or are they not?
That's not a continuation of the trade war. Trump was continuing to fight it.
Tariffs aren't a trade war. The Trump tariffs that he put in place to cripple Chinese manufacturing that Biden kept, that's not continuing the trade war.
No, continuing to extend
war over Taiwan,
the tariffs
that's
is a
bluster,
trade
which doesn't
war.
count. But he's their golden boy, right?
War was not threatened. War wasn't threatened.
They said we'll go to war if Taiwan is invaded, which has never been said before.
Do you believe Taiwan will be invaded? Because I think that's horseshit. I think that's
but I hope that they get invaded. I hope that they do. But that won't happen.
That's not a threat of war.
Yes, it is. And either way, it's an unprecedented statement. Even Trump didn't say that, and Trump was supposedly this war hawk against China. The point I'm trying to make broadly is that, Biden is not a competent, this is not a real political actor. We are talking about a figurehead for the deep state. We're talking about a figurehead for State Department, intelligence community, etc. All of those people, all those bureaucrats, they want war with China. Those people they're not in any sense.
They don't want war with China. They'd lose all their investments. China is globalistic. They've absorbed trillions of dollars of investments.
What's with all the saber rattling then over Taiwan? Why not just
posturing.
Give it to them? Why not just give it to them?
It's posturing.
Why not give it to them?
Should we can't give anything. Taiwan's an independent nation. They have to make their own decisions.
They're not independent. If we gave up our defense pact with them, China would come in and seize them.
Doubtful. China would have to have a functioning navy first.
Oh, please. Taiwan is right off the coast. The idea that Taiwan could put up a defense by itself is laughable, and you know that. The only thing that's standing between Beijing controlling Taiwan is America, which we're doing now more aggressively.
That's nonsensical.
And what's more is it's not just It's not just the DoD. It's not just the State Department. It's even big tech. Like if you went back 4 years ago or something, I remember it was Google said they would not do contracts with the Pentagon. They said, we will not make weapons of war for the Pentagon. In recent years, all the big tech companies, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Facebook, Google, all of them, they have all lined up to get these big contracts with the federal government and said, if we want to outcompete with Chinese big tech, if we want to outcompete with China, we've got to work with America. And they specifically say this nonsense about we have to ensure the world is safe for democracy. And that's why Facebook and Google have to partner with the federal government to compete with Chinese big tech, to compete with the Chinese government. It's like, so you're trying to say that like there's this, and don't get me wrong, there's some Chinese influence. You have Eric Swalwell had an Asian mistress. Yeah, okay. But the idea that American big tech and the American State Department are like not opposed to China, that's just ridiculous. And like none of the evidence supports that.
Nick, there was a report just last year that several million Chinese loyalists had infiltrated things in the Western world. So is that not influence? Or what about Feinstein's limo driver too?
Oh, Feinstein's limo driver. And yeah, I mean, sure, probably
for about
a lot
20
of the
years, if I remember correctly.
I'm sure a lot of the foreign students are probably Chinese spies. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, that's
so China spies on the West.
Yeah,
we're moving
spy
in a
on
Chinese
China.
direction. We're moving in a Chinese direction that's more totalitarian, and that's not a good thing. But we should be more like China. What exactly is your point? They're not going to look at.
Are you playing dumb right now?
No, let's say that the United States adopted Chinese-style ethno-nationalistic sentiment. So you can't parse the ethno-nationalism from the rest of China, so it's become more totalitarian. Do you think you wouldn't have other views that would get you gulagged if you spoke out at all?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Then that would be a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
So then why are you arguing on behalf of that kind of system? Simply because of race?
I'm not arguing on behalf of their system. I never argue, and I
then
said
what,
that at the
what
beginning.
Exactly are you arguing then?
Yeah, let me explain it. You keep interrupting me, but I don't even think you understand what I'm arguing.
I was told this was fundamentally about U.S. versus Chinese nationalism.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and I said in my opening statement, I said that the rise of China is good for American dissidents insofar as we share a common enemy in the American regime. That's my point. And I said earlier, I said it's besides the point. I said at the beginning, it's besides the point to compare the two systems. I said, yes, Chinese is probably more severe. I said, but qualitatively different in important ways. I said, but that's besides the point that you have this sort of arbitrage in the sense that American dissidents against the American regime, our enemy is the American regime. America's government is the biggest problem in the world. The globalists that run the American government are the biggest problem in the world.
Then you should be a libertarian.
They happen to be the biggest problem for us. So as long as China is making that regime relatively less powerful, that's a good thing. It's evil people that specifically hate us, and they right now have global hegemony. If China can shake things up and create a bilateral world order, or a bipolar world order, I should say, that's a good thing for us. The less of the world that is controlled, and then therefore the less power that is wielded by the evil people in our own government that we're under their jurisdiction that they have, that's better. That's all I said. So I'm not arguing that China's...
But Nick, let's say that the Western sphere shrinks. That doesn't mean the U.S. government has less power over U.S. citizens and therefore U.S. dissidents. It just means that they're not capable of extending the power to Panama or something. How the hell does that help U.S. dissidents?
It helps U.S. dissidents in the same way that America can stir up problems in other countries. I mean, it's not.
But what does that have to do with domestic censorship? What does that have to do with domestic censorship or anything like that that concerns us specifically?
Okay, let's entertain a hypothetical. In the future, China's more powerful, and Darren Beattie has talked about this too. What if China were to go in and say, we're going to open up our servers and we're going to host American sites. We're going to open up our payment processors and process American payments for American dissidents.
What if?
That is, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're going to do that, but that's an example of what becomes possible. The possibilities open up for an alternative to American hegemony to present itself.
We already have that.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
There's
new tech. New tech is out there. We're innovating.
Okay.
We're making things more censorship preserving
yeah,
censorship.
Right, because we have BitChute and we have Rumble. Don't get me wrong.
You can use them.
I admire the efforts of people creating alternative tech, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a losing proposition. Insofar as they control the state.
It would be better to put your servers in a third world country than to put them in China, because China is heavily censored. Well, why not move them to Laos?
But could you,
or
let me ask
Thailand
you
or
this, Styx,
something?
could you see a scenario where China does start helping dissidents in the United States, or
No.
giving them some type of benefit or like platform to use? You don't see
No, and
that
I'll tell
happening.
you exactly why. Because then they would get attacked by the same corporate powers in the West that are trying to flummox those people already. And China is a money sponge. They do not care about your right to free speech. They don't even
Well, it
comprehend
would
the
be a
concept.
political thing.
The
That
only
wouldn't be
thing
out
they
of
care,
goodness of their
the
heart.
only thing the Chinese government cares about is money. So they're not going to piss off big tech. They're not going to piss off anything else in the Western world. They're not going to help you. If China became a monopolar power, you'd be in the same goddamn boat that you're in, except that instead of being harassed by the government, having an account frozen, you'd have it confiscated. Instead of being questioned, you'd be put in a goddamn gulag. That's the only difference.
Here's the thing.
Yes.
You keep, honestly, I don't even think you have an argument. You keep saying things that are obvious, like China likes to make money. China has colonies in Africa. China built a canal in Nicaragua. Yeah, that's not an argument. The argument that I'm making is that, and this is, I've yet to hear a dispute from this, the American regime is targeting American dissidents. I mean, I don't think we really need to explain, because yeah, exactly. But how will change in regime come from within when the American state and the American big tech and the American academia and entertainment complex, these are the most powerful institutions within our country. So something has to come from without our country. There is no institution in America, yes it does, that can rise up and challenge the American system where there's a monopoly, where a globalist class has a total monopoly on power. We saw what happened when we tried to
have the same monopoly in China, Nick.
Yeah,
that's the whole
obviously,
point.
But China's a rival to America. Beijing is a rival
and it
to
won't
DC.
be, but it's not a rival within the country. It's a rival without the country.
Yes,
you are
but
arguing.
China can
you are arguing
America's
for a competing
domestic affairs.
No, it
That's
can't. You're
point.
arguing. Yes, it does.
Influence America's domestic affairs.
Well, it definitely does in the case of
which is it? You just said they don't. Now they do. They can only do bad things, but not good things.
It encourages critical race theory and censorship and all the other things we have to fuck with.
Really? How?
Absolutely.
How?
Their official Chinese propaganda, Xinhua News, is constantly pushing this stuff. Don't you pay attention to them? That's their official mouthpiece.
Xinhua News. I don't read Xinhua News.
That is the official Chinese state mouthpiece. I look at their material every single day.
Do they influence domestic affairs or do they not? They do, right?
They do not directly influence.
They don't. They can't directly influence American affairs.
This is not an either-or argument. They're both true. Let me explain for a moment.
They both can and cannot?
They don't make decisions on behalf of the U.S. government pertinent to things like censorship. However, they do influence U.S. businesses, not the government, but businesses, to do the sort of things that are done to you, that are done to me, because of investment.
China's the reason that I'm banned.
That is not what I said.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying that you'd be in the same boat either way. The way to undermine the U.S. system is from the bottom, through civics and through activism that very few people participate in. It's already happening now.
How?
Didn't you pay attention to the election the other day? I was told demographics are destiny and Youngkin had no chance. I was told that critical race theory would be the law of the land soon. It's being rejected. We're fighting back. We Americans can do it ourselves. We don't need the fucking Chinese communists to do it for us.
You're right. No,
I don't need China to help me.
You know, when I look at
I speak to 100,000 people a day just on new tech, Nick.
When I see Facebook creating the metaverse, when I see DHS expanding their authority, when I see a new war on terror being started, I take heart in knowing that Glenn Youngkin could win in Virginia and that I could stream to 100 people on Rumble. I know that we could take on the system. The point is, what you're talking about is
oversimplification fallacy.
It's not oversimplification.
It is.
It's just true. It's just true that the kinds of things that you think are going to bring about regime change are just not sufficient. And if you think they are, you're not being realistic.
They're
not working.
Absolutely, they are.
They're not
Thousands
in one
of
way, shape, or form.
Dude,
They just
Steve
cheated us
Bannon-
out of the
Steve
election.
Bannon-
Now we have a vax mandate. They banned us from everything on earth. The best that we have is this true social thing and
in
frank
part because of
speech.
businesses. No, the vax mandate was pushed back. And as far as Virginia, I don't think that that was fortified. The states run the elections. I already had this argument with Anomaly. The states run the elections, just like the states have to impose mandates. Biden's mandate will be thrown out the window. But in China, if a state mandate's put in, it's not going to get thrown out because some states dissent now, is it? And the fact is this: you're expecting Big Daddy China, as Trump would say,
Big Daddy
to somehow help you. Why don't you help yourself? Speak out more, get more civically involved, so stop being black-pilled. Why don't you do that instead?
I'm not black-pilled.
Yes, you are.
I'm white-pilled, but I'm realistic. And you don't say the same things that I do. As far as I know, you're still on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not.
I very carefully do not give them an excuse to ban me just so that I can continue to front for new tech.
Give them an excuse.
It's been working.
Listen, my friend.
That's why I've got 140,000+ people watching me on BitChute.
I've been on the front lines of this thing since Charlottesville. Okay, I know that's not very long.
You're not on the front lines anymore.
I am. I was in Charlottesville. I was at January 6th. I wasn't in the Capitol, but I was at the Capitol complex.
You were at a false flag event and an event that any reasonable person would say was probably optically a bad idea.
No, I don't.
How does that make you on the front line?
The president was there too.
And that's really besides the point. But the point is this: the point is, as far as American dissent is concerned, I'm on the front lines. It's like me, it's Alex Jones, it's Andrew Anglin, it's Jared Taylor. We're the most censored people in America, not you for going on and saying free markets are awesome and Beijing, Biden, all these GOP
So the fact that I have more strategic tact makes me somehow less educated.
No, you're not a threat to the system. It's not strategic tact.
Am.
They have a neutral. Oh, really? Please.
I'm still speaking out on these platforms. I'm more of a threat
I like
than
you as a person, but let's not kid ourselves. Going on and with the GOP talking points about Trump is fucking awesome.
You're not a threat to your system on your soul. You're not a threat to the system on your private website, Nick.
Anybody.
You're not a threat to the system on your private website.
Cup of coffee. What we say and the potential that we have is a threat.
Now you're angry. Because I pointed out the obvious.
I'm not angry.
You're incredulous. You're not a threat to the system with your private website. You haven't even barely branched out into new tech.
Well, hey,
you've got an entire tech revolution and a civic revolution happening right now that you're not part of.
Wait a second. You said that my private site isn't a threat to the system?
No,
why is that? And why is that?
Because they can make it unsearchable, Nick.
Oh, really? So
you're
put
saying yourself into an echo chamber.
Even though we can make alternatives, it's no match for the monopolistic control of the American regime.
You can't
it's
do
almost
everything
like
yourself.
Do more activism and revolution from the bottom isn't going to happen, right? You just got done saying that we just got to go on Rumble.
Nick.
We don't need China. We're just going to go on Rumble and fight the system. Now you're telling me that. Listen, I know you're losing this debate and you're trying to interrupt me, but now you're telling me my private site isn't a threat. Why? Because on a logistical level, it can't compete? Well, what did you just get done saying? That we were going to have the BitChute Glenn Youngkin revolution?
BitChute's a little bit bigger than your private website, Nick, now, isn't it?
How much bigger? How much bigger compared to
Probably
Facebook?
About 1,000 times bigger.
Users. 2.8 billion users on Facebook. And what does BitChute
Who
have?
uses Facebook? Boomers! Nobody gives a shit about
3 billion people. Third of the world's population.
No, there aren't 3 billion active accounts on Facebook. Not even close to.
All right.
Not even close. Not unless you count.
BitChute is a competitor
bots.
to Facebook. BitChute is a
no. BitChute's a competitor to YouTube, not to Facebook.
Oh, it's a competitor to YouTube. Got it. BitChute's a competitor to YouTube. Right.
Just sit back and let YouTube make its own mistakes, and these sites do fine.
I just grilled up a hamburger in my backyard, and I'm a competitor to fucking McDonald's too, right?
Yeah, if you choose to invest in that skill.
But McDonald's better watch
You just
out.
made another point for me. If you invest in that skill and enough time and effort, yes, you could be a competitor to McDonald's, just as McDonald's started out as one restaurant.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in China now, can you?
I mean, what kind of conception of America do you have? Do you just get done watching Yankee Doodle Dandy? It's not the 1920s
I have a conception
anymore,
I have a conception that the United States can actually be fixed and improved, but the Eastern Bloc can't. We're already improving it. Again, I can appear to more people every day on New Tech than I do on YouTube with a relatively limited amount of actual effort. You're not making that effort, and you're acting all black-pilled and saying, no, Big Daddy China will save me. Big Daddy China ain't going to save you, dude.
Daddy Xi will save me.
Shouldn't you be doing this, and shouldn't you be doing that instead?
Daddy Xi will save me. I am. I made my own censorship-proof platform. I have a following on Telegram. I have a following on Gab. I have a close relationship with
And
Andrew
that's good.
Torba.
Then you're not silenced.
Yes, I am. Because
You're
when I was
speaking
on...
out.
Oh, okay. I mean, you know, again...
How many people... Listen, how many people do you have following you on Telegram?
40,000.
That's a lot of people. How many on Gab? I think it's more than me.
135,000, something like that.
How the fuck are you silenced, dude? You get 130,000 fuckers following you on Gab.
That's a great point. It's because if you want social media to compete with mainstream media, you need the network effect. And the kind of damage that you need to do just can't be achieved on platforms like Gab at this point in time. And I like Gab as a project, but they've got 20, 30 million active users. Twitter is not even in the top 10 worldwide, and they've got 380 million active users.
Rome was not built in a day, Nick.
I understand that.
Time and effort. Civic effort.
But
knock
time
on
is not
doors
on
or
our
something.
side. Time
Yes,
is
it
not on
is.
our side. How?
Oh, yeah, it is.
How? They're shutting everything down, man. And listen, it's cartels.
Then fight back. Do what you need to do.
You can't, because there's MasterCard and Visa are a cartel.
Your ancestors shot people for impugning upon them. You can't fight back. You can't fight back by making a website or a Gab page.
You can make a website.
We can fight back. Stop being demoralized, everyone out there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, I appreciate your childlike optimism, but it's time to grow up a little bit, Styx.
So the founding fathers that were your ancestors, they were just childlike optimists.
No, the founding fathers.
We can't fight back against this. They've got 12-pounder guns. Oh my God.
Founding fathers are in a very different situation than we are right now.
Yeah, much worse one. They died of tuberculosis at a rate of like 5% per year. So.
Why is everything you say so banal and asinine? I mean, just all these, because they died of tuberculosis. Like,
because you're backing China and Chinese style nationalism.
And
so
what
there's
does
no
that
reason
have to do
to have
with tuberculosis
serious
in
debate.
America? It has nothing to do with it.
It has to do with the non-serious nature of a debate in which my opponent is backing China.
The non-serious nature
Really,
of the debate where somebody is
to.
arguing that BitChute's a competitor to YouTube, and we're just not doing activism hard enough, and Glenn Youngkin is the beginning of the takeover of the American regime.
You'd probably have more subscribers than me on BitChute if you had actually gotten on there early.
Now what is this? Is this just an ad campaign now for BitChute? I mean, what do you want me to say?
I use Odyssey
I'm on
as well.
Gab TV. I'm on
I also
Rumble,
use Odyssey.
I'm on Band.video, and I'm on Cozy TV, and I'm on Telegram. Yeah, I'm not on BitChute. You're going to keep doing this. Well, you're not working hard enough. Well, I'm not on your platform.
So as a dissident, you still have a significant voice. It may not be on the mainline platforms, but you can appear to 100,000 people easily in a day. You can't do that under an Eastern-style authoritarian system, the one based on the Chinese model that you yourself proclaim that we're moving towards. How is that a benefit? How is that better? How is it better, Nick? Answer the goddamn question. You can sit there and poo-poo me all you want. I still haven't.
You want to see some poo-pooing? You're going to get some poo-poo in your life. Listen, here's the answer.
Yeah, no,
okay?
I'm not
here's
an enabler. So
let's just go through this again. We're not moving towards a Chinese style system. We're moving towards a system of censorship, which is qualitatively different than the Chinese system. We're censoring different things. We established from the beginning the Chinese system is not desirable and the Chinese system is more severe. It is qualitatively different. The principles nominally that animate their government are different from the ones that animate ours. Objectively, they are better than ours. Insofar as China is nationalistic, insofar as they are upholding traditional masculinity and traditional values, that is superior to transsexualism, homosexuality, BLM, and replacement migration. I'm not in favor of, I don't think we should become China. I don't think we should have a Chinese style system. That's not what we have. We're just increasing in censorship. What I said from the start, I didn't say that dissidents don't have a voice. I said you're naive if you think that America's much better. It's better. It's better, absolutely. And there is more hope, I think, in America than in China. Absolutely. But it's naive to say that we're going in a better and not a worse direction. It's naive to think that things are much better than China or even that they're good. Things are bad. It's time to sound the alarm. We're in a crisis right now. It's not an exaggeration to say that. Things have gotten dramatically worse in the past 5 years. That being said, we as dissidents are the #1 target of the American government, at least in the past, 9 months. It's the FBI and the DOJ that are conducting their biggest investigation in history, rounding up 600 boomers that breached the Capitol and starting a new war on terror and a 9/11 style commission in Congress to write these laws. And they're expanding the power of the surveillance state and federal law enforcement to carry this out, criminalizing dissent, using their partners in the banks and in big tech and in mainstream media to prosecute all of this. The American regime is becoming unstoppable. They have monopolistic control. And you could point to BitChute, you could point to exceptions to the rule. But here's the thing. There's only so far that these alternatives can go. Because as I was trying to say, you tend to run into these choke points, like, for example, the App Store. Like, for example, how do you get on the Apple App Store when it's controlled by Apple? How do you run Visa and MasterCard payments through your website when that's controlled by Visa, MasterCard, and the banks? It turns out that it's not just as easy as build your own smartphone, App Store, credit card company, credit card. We'll make MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and Groyper card, and your own banks. It's not quite that simple. And so, the idea that these alternatives against these systemic odds, also against the trajectory that we're on, that they're going to constitute any kind of meaningful resistance to the system, is naive. The only thing that's going to change the regime in America is a fundamental change in the dynamic in our political system right now. I think that can be brought about by a change in the global world order and China rising relatively and challenging American global hegemony. It's an alternative.
You've been corrupted. China's rise, #1, is going to stall out at some point because of all the debt that they have. And #2 is not going to help you. The US government being embattled from without is not going to take their focus off certain domestic issues that are tied in with companies that I will, by the way, point out, and I should have pointed out before, but better late than never. Most of these companies that you see as partnered with the US government, abusing you, abusing me, etc., are tied with China, Nick.
I know.
They have investments in China. Google is trying to make a browser for China. Facebook sells shit to China all the time. So how is China or the Chinese system any better? It's not. It's worse.
I'm not saying the Chinese system is better. And I'm not even saying that China will help us.
I realize what you're saying. You're saying that the Chinese system, yes, I do. Let me paraphrase you. The Chinese system is fine insofar as they're censoring people other than I would be if I were Chinese.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
You're saying as long as they don't censor me for saying there's Han supremacy, everything's fine. Let me ask you this. If turn into a Chinese person, Nick. Go over to China and make a video about how Tibetans are ugly or something and see how long before you get into the gulag. They're not even ethno-nationalists.
Agreed. Listen,
they're not even ethno-nationalists, Nick. It's a lie.
I'm not saying that China is necessarily going to, thank you. I'm not saying that China is going to help us. I'm saying that right now, our problem is that the American regime is an occupied, we're living in an occupied country. The American regime is this hostile, parasitic, foreign elite. But it doesn't stop there. The American regime is the regime that runs the world. They don't just run our country, they run a global hegemonic system. That is really the problem, is that what they say goes on most of the planet. So it's not that
China ran it, yeah.
No, it's not that China is going to come in and help us. It's not that China is going to come in and be more benevolent. It's not that China has a better system. It's that as the American regime recedes and is humiliated, it loses credibility. It loses legitimacy. It loses its ability to project power. That's a good thing for us.
Let's go Brandon is worse for Biden's credibility.
What?
Let's go Brandon is worse for the U.S. regime's credibility than anything that China's doing.
What? Okay.
China's not doing shit as far as that goes. Biden accomplishes that just by pooping his pants.
Let's go Brandon. Okay. I feel like I'm arguing with Sean Hannity right now. I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. I mean, I'm trying to make a point.
I feel like I'm arguing with Juan Williams. So
Juan, oh my God, Juan Williams from the Five. You sound like Geraldo Rivera. You sound like Maxine Waters. You sound like AOC. Okay, well. again.
Well, no, you don't sound like AOC, but
Well, thank you. I appreciate
that.
Now,
I'll give you that
let
compliment.
me ask you this, Nick. Basically, what you're saying is anything that weakens the American regime, that it's so evil and so oppressive and ruining dissidents' lives and keeping them from expressing themselves. Basically, anything that weakens them is a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. It's not necessarily China's awesome or whatever. It's that it's not our number one enemy. Our number one enemy is not China. Our number one enemy is the U.S. regime. Our number one threat is the U.S. regime. And so geopolitics is a zero-sum game. As China rises, our number one enemy diminishes. It's not to say that China's favorable. And I joke about, I say honorable Xi. It's a joke. But the regime is our number one threat. And China, as a great power, can be stronger than the state. Rumble cannot be. Unfortunately, alternative tech and, Donald Trump and people like you and I, we just realistically don't have the resources to fight back against Alphabet and Google and Amazon and the State Department and the federal government. But if Beijing rises relative to America, American power recedes. And, it also does something for people in America where people see, the American regime isn't as powerful as it once was. It loses credibility. It loses legitimacy. All of this is good for us. Our goal is not necessarily to crash the system, but we want the regime to be delegitimized. We want them to be disempowered. And China is serving that goal. I'm not under no illusions that China is going to give me $1 trillion yuan and they're going to build me a platform or something. But possibilities like that do open up. I don't think that's outside the question forever, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that becomes, with America, that's a 0% chance. At no point is Facebook going to do something to help me. But with China, they're not them. They're not our number one adversary. So yeah, Ethan, Ralph, that's the right way to say it.
Can I respond briefly to that?
Yes, go ahead. Then we'll get to some super chats here.
The rise of China does not delegitimize the U.S. government in any interior sense, and will not actually help you in your cause. The way to delegitimize Beijing, Biden, or any other federal administration, which really tends to be the problem, is exactly what's happening now. Civic action on the local level and using state power. It's already happening. There's a Free State Project in New Hampshire for a reason. All you need are a handful of people within Congress and a few governors, and you can sue the federal government ad nauseum. Well, that's going to be more effective than eating beef chow mein.
Well, if we're not going to get to, I'll just say briefly, and listen, I'm still white-pilled in the sense that I think that we can have regime change in America, and I do still believe in the political process, but a rising tide of China is just something that's going to help us. That's all. Because I'm not saying 100%. I mean, I'm not optimistic 100%. I mean, I think that we've had a better shot now than we did 5 years ago. I still believe in doing the kinds of things like you're talking about, using alt tech. I do it. And, free state projects and electing people. I still believe in the process, but, you have to look at who's promoting this anti-China stuff. It's the State Department, it's the neocons, it's the U.S. regime, it's the big tech companies. They're all pushing this anti-China line, and it's similar. I am too. It's anti-China, something like scapegoating, and it's diverting people's attention from the real threat. You have like Fox News telling baby boomers like the Chi-Coms. It's like the Chi-Coms aren't throwing the Capitol rioters in jail. The Chi-Coms going to ban you from all the big tech platforms. We just need a sense of perspective. I'm not worried about China. I'm worried about America.
I mean, but neither are elements within the U.S. government, especially at the state level. A large proportion of states are absolutely against what's happening at the federal level. You don't need China to rise up in order to reform our system. That's the one wonderful thing about the U.S. system. I'm not talking about Christian city on a hill, Ave Columbia, any of this other hyperbolic nonsense. The one really great thing is you can change that system. It's not easy, but it's possible. In many countries in the world, you're going to be staring down the barrel of a gun if you try. There are excesses and abuses within the U.S. system. The January 6th protesters should all be released. They should be apologized to. They won't be. But in our system, the U.S. Marshal just went in the middle of the night, looked at the prisons and said, oh, these conditions, actually, they're not adequate, so a bunch of these people have to be moved. Imagine that happening in a gulag in China. We still have hope, and you just admitted to it. There's new tech. There are all of these other ways to fight back. Speak out. Get civically involved. That's what we need to do. We don't need anything akin to a Chinese system, and the rise of China won't help us. I realize that you're backing off from the idea that the Chinese system has merit.
I'm not.
Well,
backing off. I didn't say that from the beginning. I didn't say that from the beginning. I said the Chinese system is more severe and not desirable.
Yeah, but they censor the people that you would want to censor too. So somehow that's great.
I didn't say that. I said that.
Yes, you did.
I said that if you look at the two systems, which would you prefer? And I didn't. That's not to say that there's only these two systems. I said China's more severe, not desirable. I said, but for what it's worth, they don't censor people for criticizing trannies.
Let me ask you this then: if you were ethnically Chinese, would you move to China?
Yeah, I would move to China now, but I'm on a no-fly list.
So it's no longer America first. Well, I mean, you can use a ship.
I fear for my life. I fear for my life here. At any moment, the FBI could break down my door or assassinate me.
That could happen to any of us. It's just sort of something that happens when you're a content creator.
Yeah, and like Vladimir Lenin fled Russia and came back when the revolution happened. It's like
or it's like modern day China.
We have to be thinking about hard power, and it's like it's very easy to say.
China's entire economy is based on Western degeneracy insofar as selling cheap shit to materialistic consumers. So they're not going to
Beijing. But
yeah,
the point is like. It's all fine and well to say we've got hope and there's a process here, but that is becoming less and less true every day. There's a process. Like, yeah, people have tried to sue big tech. It doesn't work. And you want to know why? It's because, and this is where the naivete comes in. It's like all the judges, all the lawyers, the whole system, all these people who make the big decisions, they all went to the same schools. They all went to Yale, Harvard, MIT. They all know each other. They all work together. They're all in on it. And so the idea that it's like, well, we're going to win this race for governor and we're going to sue the media. It's like arguable if that was ever really the case, but certainly that was more the case before than it is now. And it's not the case with each passing day. People try to sue. For example, against the vaccine mandates. In Maine, there's no religious exemption for the vaccine mandates. And all these nurses sued. And the Supreme Court wouldn't give them emergency relief. It's like, that's textbook First Amendment. In Indiana University, they sued about the vax mandate. Supreme Court did nothing. Last year, this was a cut and dry constitutional issue. Pennsylvania state Supreme Court changed election law, which is not their jurisdiction, and the Supreme Court did nothing about it. The whole election was rigged. They did nothing about it. So like this idea that, well, we have this system and yeah, it's not perfect, but hey, it's better than what they have. It's like, it's very naive because I don't think we're getting actually effective redress through these institutions.
But it's actually true because defortification is taking place and people have taken those cases and escalated them beyond local jurisdiction.
Yeah, and
but again, this isn't. I guess this isn't even apparently a debate about the merits of the U.S. system. This is about the role of dissidents and whether a U.S. or Chinese system would be better. Well, we can see what happens to dissidents in China.
Why do you keep pivoting away? I mean, like the fundamental reality that I'm talking about here is really it's about the bankruptcy of our process. And it's about recognizing the real grave threat of the American regime. When people call me a Chinese shill, I don't care. And you want to know why? It's because nobody in America should be more worried about China than they are about the U.S. regime. That's the point. I would
agree with that. Absolutely.
I would much rather come across as a Chinese shill than...
Yes. I'm very worried about the U.S. regime being more and more like China. That's the whole point. Being more and more authoritarian, censorious, and centralized.
See, the thing
is, you're making my point for me.
You sound like the State Department. I would rather sound like Beijing than the fucking State Department. I'd rather sound like China and Huawei and Xinhua and whatever.
So you'd rather sound like their State Department. That's much better.
Yes, because our State Department is far worse. Far more evil and far more of a threat to me and to our people in America. Yes, that's the premise that I started the whole debate out with.
But here's the thing. In Bizarro World, there's a Nick Fuentes who's Chinese who's saying this on a live stream, and instead of being on a live stream being left alone, they get taken to a gulag by positively comparing the enemy's State Department to the domestic one.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I can say the State Department of the United States is full of idiots. Nobody's going to do anything about it. But if you're Chinese in Bizarro World, you can't do that.
What do you really, but what you're saying has nothing to do with what I'm saying. I agree with you. I agree with you. Yes, this was the first 5 minutes of the debate. I said, yes, the Chinese are more censorious. They are more severe in their enforcement, more authoritarian. That is completely besides the point. The point is that their more censorious, more severe system applies to their jurisdiction over there across the Pacific. Our regime is a bigger threat to us and a bigger threat to the world than their State Department.
Yes, any domestic regime is going to be a bigger threat to you because it has legal capabilities. But converting that regime doesn't take those legal capabilities away, and favoring the other guy and having them gain more power doesn't reduce the ability of that domestic regime to abuse you. The United States government doesn't magically lose a proportion of its legal powers over your and my life because Beijing has more money. That's not the way that it works. No, it does not.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
No.
Here's why. Here's why.
No, it doesn't.
Here, you want to know how?
That's
because
insane.
Let's take the example of Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden's an NSA whistleblower. He goes out, and by the way, you say, oh, they're not going to. Edward Snowden leaked like illegal things the NSA was doing. James Clapper lied under sworn oath to Congress. Edward Snowden, patriot, leaked what's going on to the American people. They have plans to kill him, hunt him down, torture him. The only place that he is safe is in Russia. Why? Why is Edward Snowden safe in Russia? Because Russia, America can't send their CIA glow N-words to Russia to kill him. Russia gave him political asylum. And now you could argue, yeah, the CIA could probably put a spy in there and kill him. It would cause a big diplomatic row. But the point is, the only place that Edward Snowden could go, he had to sneak out. He had to manage like U.S. extradition. He was in Hong Kong. The only place that he was safe was Russia, or the American government would kill him. What about Julian Assange? Julian Assange is in the basement of the Ecuadorian embassy for years. Now he's being tortured on an airplane. He got brought back to America where they're going to sentence him. I mean, like, that is why America losing global hegemony is a good thing for dissidents. This isn't complicated. The less of the world that America controls, the better, as long as you recognize that the American regime is not us. It's this evil group of people that want to exterminate us and end our way of life in America. So
no, it's just like a Russian dissident who whistleblows would maybe flee to the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So what's the difference?
There is
what's
no
the difference? So yeah, it's arbitrary. So what would the difference be? Well, no, it's also arbitrary. What you're saying is what my point is. So if China becomes more expansionist, more wealthy,
so it's particular.
But Snowden was already capable of traveling to China to seek refuge there and then to Russia at its current power level. Why do you need China to be more imperialistic then?
Because
people are already capable of fleeing.
We want the safe refuge to be bigger, and we want America to.
It's
be
not
smaller.
a safe refuge. Snowden now has to deal with Russian law. He can't criticize Putin. He can't whistleblow in Russia. He can't whistleblow in Russia, can he? He goes to China. Can he speak out against the Chinese government while he's there, even while they're sheltering him? No.
Yeah, but that's the whole point, though.
So it's the same fucking problem. This is why we need more liberty in the world. We need to get past this constant problem.
Vomits. we need more
breaking down and nervous laughter will not help you.
Come on now. It's not nervous laughter.
You're bringing a knife to a sword fight.
Okay. It's just laughable, the idea that Edward Snowden is equally in jeopardy in Russia because ostensibly he can't say negative things about Putin when the American government is hunting him because he leaked something about our NSA in America. I mean, that vindicates my whole point, though. That's the whole point, is that Edward Snowden is American, speaking out against the American system for the benefit of the American people, hunted by the American regime, and now he has safety and refuge in Russia. Yes, you're right. Russia is not a free country. There is no freedom. We live in the real world, okay? The libertarian fantasy is not going to happen. But at least Edward Snowden is safe there because that is a corner of the globe that American global hegemony does not have total control over.
It could if the money was right.
Insofar as American dissidents want to speak out against the American government and not fear reprisal, have a safe refuge, potentially have alternatives, it is better for rival powers to rise up and eat up more of the market share and to diminish American global hegemony. That's the point. You could say, oh, yeah, it's, Russian dissidents are supported by America, American dissidents supported by Russia. Yeah, that's the point. But we are American. we are American dissidents hunted by the American regime. So the Chinese regime or the Russian regime or the Hungarian or Syrian or whatever, these rogue states, insofar as they are not trying to kill us like the American government is, they're not pursuing us with a vengeance because we're not dissenting against
the US
their
government's
government.
trying to kill you,
it's
Nick.
good that they're okay. It's good that they're diminishing American hegemony and rising relatively to America. That's just the point. And you keep coming back with these just like, I don't even know, diversions. I don't even know if you're hearing what I'm saying or if you're understanding it or willfully naive. And then these just like half-baked drive-by sardonic rebuttals about, well, now we can't criticize Putin. It's like, so fucking what? State Department's trying to kill him because he revealed that the NSA is spying on everybody.
So then it would be good if the U.S. gained more power, because then Russian dissidents could flee to the U.S. and they'd have a greater safe passage, right?
But the Russian regime is not the number one threat to the world and to the American people. The American regime.
There you go. So the U.S. government is also the greatest threat to the world.
Yes, I said that earlier.
Why?
They're the number one threat to humanity. Why? Because of what they're promoting in the world. When we go and do
Chinese are promoting the leftoidism. Again,
Really?
watch
America's-
Xinhua News. Watch their
my
official
gosh, with the
state.
Xinhua.
Watch their official state media mouthpiece, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Maybe it'll red pill you.
In China, they ban effeminate men from being on TV.
Yeah,
in
but they
America,
promote them
we
in the
raise
West.
the gay pride flag in Ukraine.
Yes, but they promote them in the West.
Yeah,
So they're a bigger danger to U.S. citizens in some ways.
they're a bigger danger than America. Okay.
All
Now
right,
you just lost the plot, man.
this has been an epic fucking debate, I have to say. I didn't have to
I got to
do
use
much.
the bathroom at some point, Ralph,
Yeah,
though. I can't
that's-
do much
that's-
longer.
Okay, that's cool. Let me read these super chats though, because people were very generous. I want to get those in. Like I said, I didn't want to interrupt too much because it was just too epic. Colin Stevens says, Ralph, a Killstream clip of the Styx versus Spencer debate was featured in Mark Dice's video today. I saw that. Shout out to Mark Dice. Thank you, sir. Tall Kevin 87 says Chinese aren't getting PayPal accounts suspended and fired from their jobs. It is Jewish groups and those who do not talk of this are complicit. Rat-faced man fears J-naming because this is a grift to him, he said. K. Max McDonald says, for both, it's obvious China... this is for both, he said. Is it obvious China's government does not hate the Han Chinese people? America's government hates the historic American people. Could you imagine China allowing a minority to hate the majority? Anybody want to take that? Or
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point is... in China, they have minorities, but the minorities are not glorified. There's no, Uyghur lives matter, or, Turkestan lives matter, Mongolian, that's exactly the point. And it's not to say that, again, we should have the Chinese system, but it has to be said. It has to be said that, the Chinese attitude about their 21st century and ours is totally different. And my money's on China. Is it a system that's has more cruelty and less freedom? Absolutely. But who's going to inherit the 21st century, them or us, with the affirmative action and the feminism and the diversity hires and all this bullshit? I think it's China. I would totally put my money over 100 years, long-term investment on China.
I'll put my investment on the U.S. I think over the next decade or two, the U.S. is pivoting back in the other direction, and the Chinese, as they gain more economic clout, actually will become more globalistic and multicultural. I think they're going to have exactly the same goddamn problem.
Tall Kevin 87 says, Styx, why won't you use the word anti-whiteism? The effects of what you call leftoid politics all have the consequences of victimizing white people as their goal. Why don't you want to stop anti-whiteism?
Well, I literally have a video about the anti-white racism of MSNBC that I made this morning, so I don't know what this commenter is talking about. Go ahead and look it up.
All right, fair enough. Good plug there as well. Winston Fujimori says, although the U.S. establishment is, in name and rhetoric, against China, don't they submit to the PRC the way they act and vote? I mean, General Milley gave General Milley gave the Chinese information in advance about U.S. military data and intel, and he's still in the U.S. military.
Yeah, General Milley said that because he thought that America was going to launch like a nuclear strike against China, and insofar Milley's against nuclear war, he did that. But, if you look at the posture of any elements of the national security apparatus, if they weren't before, they are now all anti-China. Atlantic Council, State Department, CIA, the Biden administration, the DOD, all of it. And, I just said it. Daily Stormer covered this last week for the first time ever. Was the DoD secretary and one other U.S. official for the first time said we're willing to go to war to protect Taiwan. And even the big tech companies have had a change in attitude about doing these big contracts with the federal government for like so-called patriotic reasons. In other words, to shore up the American regime. So you look at the competition that's happening in the South China Sea and the sponsorship of the people in Hong Kong, the protesters, and this propaganda about the Uyghur Muslims. And you look at the competition between Huawei 5G and American 5G and big tech, and it's like, it's clear. People say, oh, they're in bed with each other. Yeah, there's espionage and there's corruption on both sides, but it's clear that these two institutions are opposed. Beijing and DC are opposed.
You want to weigh in on that a little bit, Styx?
I think that DC and Beijing are tied at the hip through investments. All the politicians in Beijing and all the politicians in DC have investments in one another's countries, et cetera, and in third-party nations through slush funds. We've known that China's been funding aspects of the leftoid movement since the 1990s, or at least the 1980s in the U.S. As soon as the U.S. opened up to the Eastern Bloc to try to draw them in through trade, there was backlash, and unfortunately we ended up getting infected by communism.
All right, now let's see here. Petal, I'm just going to say Petal because I'll mess up the rest of it. Patelka, maybe? Thank you for the super chat. She says, Styx, for someone so anti-China, I'd expect your merch mugs would be made in the US of A and not the PRC, and they are made in China, she says.
They were prior, and I was not aware of that. I've already talked to the merch manufacturers, and we have actually changed that. They're made in the US. Actually, they weren't made in China to begin with. They were screened in China. That has changed now. Now they're made in Maryland, actually, I believe.
Okay. K-Max McDonald says, why do you think in China diversity is never brought up as a strength or a necessity, yet in America it is? What is the difference between the two countries?
Because China is more ethnically homogenous at the moment. But again, when duty calls and it becomes lucrative for the CCP's officials, you can look for their official party line to change towards, oh, we need to be more tolerant and accepting because we want to branch out further. They want more money. It's the same as in Western political circles, except that they're less honest about the fact that that's what drives them. I'm going to use the bathroom really quickly, though, Ralph. I mean, Nick can weigh in if he wants. It'll only take a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, the reason why is because, well, it's not just that China's more homogeneous. It's that China has a much stronger self-conception and identity than America. You know, China's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and their conception of self is very different from America. You know, it's interesting when you compare the Muslim world to China to America. We all have a very different conception of sovereignty, and it's a mistake to project our conception of sovereignty and specifically, you know, national sovereignty and identity on other countries. China views themselves as the center of the world. They view the whole world as revolving around China. Their religion is China. Like China is their overriding conviction. They don't think that China had a beginning. They think that China's just always been there. And so it's not, they are more homogeneous, but they have big ethnic minorities. You know, they've got arguably 4 peripheral countries within their borders. They've got Tibet, they've got the Uyghurs, they've got the Mongolians, and they've got the Manchurians. So they have more minorities than that too. They've got diversity, but they've got a much stronger conception of self than we do. In America, you know, we're a relatively new nation, a so-called immigrant nation, even if you look at European immigration in the turn of the century. And, you know, we also have this parasitic foreign elite, which, you know, a lot of them are Jewish. That's a big component of it, you know, critical theory and, you know, the sort of Jewish worldview. I mean, that's a big part of it that, you know, and this is what rabbis and others have argued. Brett Stevens did a debate with a rabbi years ago, and they said, why is Trump bad for the Jews? Because he's hostile to liberal internationalism, which is good for the Jewish people. So, you know, you can't really have a discussion about how this destruction of American identity has come about without talking about how, you know, there's been this big contingent of Jews in the elite.
Man, I just was reminded of the Yellow River and then of Xi Jinping, actually, when I was in the bathroom. What I would say is with critical race theory, I only caught the end of that. You do realize, again, it has been openly promoted by China's official state media mouthpiece.
To weaken
They are
America.
promoting, exactly. And you seem to be in favor
By the way,
of that. So-
this next super chat actually deals with that. Kansas Zoomer says, in China, TikTok bans things that undermine the Chinese identity. In USA, they promote things that undermine our culture. TikTok promotes LGBT stuff in the USA. In China, they ban people for posting LGBT stuff. This isn't hard to comprehend. Wolf Pup says, how does Nick and Styx feel about the Chinese government putting political prisoners in psychiatric wards and erasing their minds with pharmaceutical torture and then denying entry for investigation to the international watchdogs? America does this too, but at least they let the dogs snoop around.
I don't know that's not a bit hyperbolic.
Yeah,
that sounds sort of like what people said about the U.S. back in the 50s with MK Ultra or something.
Hey, I just read them. You guys got any thoughts on that?
At least America lets the UN sniff around their mind control experiments.
No, in the U.S., they have to share some of those drugs with the CIA.
There you go. Yeah.
K-Max
to give to the blacks.
K-Max McDonald says, for both of you, disagree on Israel's influence on the U.S. versus China's. I remember Styx saying once China has a worse influence on the U.S. than Israel does.
Yeah,
That's
well,
true.
China definitely has a lot more investment capabilities. So
That's also true. Yeah, but I agree. Israel's more influential.
All right.
I think China's more influential. Just look at Nike.
I think they won't let me put Winnie the Pooh on my basketball jersey.
Virtually every large industry in the U.S. has major ties to China. Only a few of them have them to Israel. There's more. It's more. The fiscal pressure is more China. The more unofficial social pressure is Israel, because of all the fundamentalists in the United States, I guess, like Protestant evangelicals mainly.
Well, yeah, and because there's a lot of Jews in the media and in government, and I think the Jews just wield their power more effectively because they blend in better. They look white, they don't wear yarmulkes, they change their names, they're embedded in society. So that's and they're just maybe a little bit more, I don't know, cunning, but certainly they wield power more effectively because China's richer, China's bigger, but yeah, Israel seems to know what's up.
All right, now that's a good way to put it. Grimmer Remover says, why wouldn't China fund woke politics in the West? It's destroying the West's power and ability to function. How's the Muslim swarm going in Amsterdam, Styx?
Well, I'm not in Amsterdam at this point, but I don't see any swarm or anything like that. I thought Amsterdam was lovely myself.
Grim Remover says, take a look at ABB's position on Taiwan. They're a major multinational company owned by members of the Bilderberg Group, and they recognize Taiwan as part of China. America can't do shit to them. Winston Fujimori says, play devil's advocate. On August 14th, George Soros posted an article for the Wall Street Journal calling Xi Jinping a dictator and posturing for war with China. Could it be that Xi wants to be the George Soros of China? How can he be more benevolent? Be any more benevolent, I guess. I don't really understand that question. What's the
She wants to be the
George.
Soros of China?
That doesn't. He's the dictator of China.
George,
I think that's a little bit better.
George Soros is like 100 fucking years old, so he won't be kicking around for too much longer. He's like, even older than Joe Biden. No, I think Xi Jinping doesn't remind me of Soros or anything like that. He's a statesman, a normalized one, and a lot of Americans think that the Chinese leadership, much like the DPRK's leadership, is insane or something. They're not insane. They're very, very good at business. Nothing but compliments from me as regards to China's strategic capabilities within the fiscal realm. I just don't think that their rise benefits dissidents within the West.
By the way, shout out to Winston, because it was him who got this debate going, actually, by proposing it and asking these two guys. So I didn't understand that question, really, but good idea on the debate. Tall Kevin 87 says, Benai Brith Biden, look at how many members of his cabinet have dual U.S.-Israeli citizenship. I don't see any with dual Chinese citizenship. Gates keeping Styx is afraid to lose shekels by name. Well, you know what he's saying. Any thoughts about that?
And most of my income comes from books and has nothing to do with my political views, so I'm completely independent.
K-Max McDonald says, do you guys disagree on what funds the woke stuff and censorship? Soros, the ADL, John Greenblatt, or is it China? You both might disagree on the source of the woke stuff. What is the source of the wokeness?
It's all of the above.
Yeah, I think it's predominantly, though, American institutions. I mean, I think I would, of course, agree that, China, insofar as it undermines America, will support these things. And it's true. And much to my chagrin, you look at the Chinese foreign ministry, they run social media accounts and they support BLM and things like that. And that's, again, insofar it's destabilizing America. But that being said, we know that the people that are pursuing that with a vengeance, the people prosecuting that, the people, it's all coming from, like you said, the ADL, Greenblatt. It's coming from the academic institutions. It's coming from the think tanks. It's coming from MSM, which is all American, which is, well, a lot of it Jewish, but it's all American-based. It's an American-based operation. So, to conflate like Chinese propaganda with like this American campaign to like destroy itself, I think it's just apples and oranges.
Well, then wouldn't they be fighting on the same side as you, since you want to denigrate U.S. power as well? So
I want to denigrate.
You should be supporting Israel.
I want to denigrate the power of the American regime. I don't see, because people say like, oh, Nick's a traitor. You say I'm not America first. It's like I'm not the State Department first. I'm America first. So China being more powerful than the American regime presents opportunities for American dissidents. But the American people,
yes, the opportunity to be miserable and destroyed.
Right. Yeah. But the American people being destroyed, I do not support.
Winston Fujimori says, can there be a poll after the debate? Yes, I will put one on Twitter. He said, Twitter's on fire with both sides weighing in. Also, question for Nick. Hypothetically, would he look the other way if China invaded America?
I don't know. I guess it would depend. It would honestly would depend. Are they going to invade on our side? Because they're
invading on China's. They're on their own side and always will be. So
this is not unheard of. You brought up the American Revolution. Would the American Revolution succeeded without the support of France? I don't know.
Possibly, but we don't have a time machine.
But that's the point. Is the American patriots teamed up with the French to take down the British. Would you call them traitors? Would you say they're France first, or would you say that it's just about institutions? This is power politics. It's not.
Well, the French weren't looking for a slice of the colonial pie because they already had theirs. So
sure
no, they already had theirs. There's the Louisiana Territory
of the continental pie and the colonial pie. I mean,
they already had a slice.
France had self-interest in mind. They did not intervene for purely ideological reasons. The idea that, sure, it's not exactly
you're trying. Well, see, now you're trying to conflate 1700s era French Enlightenment with Chinese commies. So.
Well, I'm trying to say that the power politics is the same. It doesn't matter what continent they're on or what they believe or what year it is. It's power.
Power
politics.
to the people. That's what we need.
No, we need
more
power
civics.
to God, power to Jesus.
Well, you won't find it. You won't find him in China. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true. But you're not going to find him in the State Department or Fox News either.
Cowpoke Van says, no chance Styx comes to Cozy.tv after disparaging it like this. Uncalled for. Cozy TV has better look and feel than Rumble and BitChute.
Nah, Styx is welcome on Cozy.
Yeah, I didn't disparage Cozy.
Winston Fujimori says, I'm glad you clarified. Winston Fujimori says U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell had an affair with a Chinese spy and he didn't get removed from Congress. It's not even talked about on mainstream media. Doesn't this point to Chinese subversion already here?
Yeah, he was bang, bang, fang, fang.
It was talked about in the media, though. That was covered in the media.
Yeah, I did read a little bit about that.
People always say that. They're like, nobody's talking about it. And it's like, there are some stories where that's actually true, and then there's some stories where people just say that
they
that's
didn't
true,
see a lot about it. Yeah, it's like, okay, it's
right.
still out
like,
there.
I think that was covered. And Republicans talk about it all the time. Does anybody talk about Jews? No. Who runs America?
Well, we talk about Jews and,
Yeah, and I'm on the fucking no-fly list, so go figure.
But I'm not. I talk about Israeli policy, etc.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Let's see.
Maybe it's because I edited the Sefer Yetzirah.
Maybe, yeah, there you go. Maybe they're like, hey,
it's my penance.
Yeah.
Winston Fujimori says, I think a big difference in the point of view between Styx and Nick is that Styx wants reformism where U.S. dissidents rise up grassroots style, whereas Nick is more revolutionary in his approach. That's more of a comment. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's something like that. I wouldn't say I'm a revolutionary. I just want to see more disruption. That's all. I want to see something more disruptive because I feel like if the current political dynamic doesn't change on a fundamental level, there's no trajectory for victory. So I'm just in favor of disruption, chaos. I want things to be shaken up. And it's no guarantee that things will be better, but at least there's an opportunity that things could be better, because the current dynamic does not favor us.
See, I would actually agree with Nick, but I would say that the way to potentially make things better is civic and domestic, as opposed to relying upon a foreign power rising up to denigrate your own system, because it wouldn't denigrate it anyway. Not in the domestic sense, not in the sense of censorship and things of that nature. It wouldn't have any impact at all.
But breaking up global hegemony necessarily shake things up. By definition, it shakes things up.
But China doesn't want to. Again, their own state media mouthpiece was praising the WTO literally earlier this morning.
They don't want to undermine American hegemony with the Belt and Road Initiative because they said something about the WTO today?
The Belt and Road has nothing to do with U.S. shipping elsewhere.
Of course.
The U.S. Navy controls the sea.
And you don't think that China is trying to undermine American hegemony in the world?
I think given 100 years, they might be able to float 2 or 3 aircraft carriers that don't sink the first time they're out of dry dock.
Yeah, that's really.
I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's going to erode U.S.
You think that China supports global American hegemony?
If that's their goal, then they're not going to undermine it in the sense of trade.
You're answering these with like trade. It's not a riddle. It's like America doesn't want their. Like China wants to control the Senkaku Islands and the Spratly Islands and South China Sea, and they want to reorient global trade towards them, and they want to dominate 5G. And you think they don't want to undermine American hegemony? That's necessarily a shakeup.
They only have one ocean frontage, so they're not going to be able to undermine U.S. naval hegemony. It's never going to happen.
Well, whether or not they can do that is besides the point. That's geographic.
This is why the Soviet Union failed. They didn't have enough Atlantic frontage in warm ports. Neither does China. They don't have any Atlantic frontage.
Yeah. They don't have a lot of frontage. Period.
It's pure. I hate to tell you this, but betting on China is a bad idea, partially just because of geography.
The Soviet Union was comparable to America in strength for a long part of the Cold War. So to say that, there was a bipolar world order. So to say, that can't happen with China. China has more frontage than the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union in the 70s was more powerful than America.
The Soviets also had like 4 times the land area, so that tends to help.
Well, and China has 10 times the population. So there you go.
That doesn't help with resource extraction.
Well, it's manpower.
We should go on to other questions, though. Otherwise, we'll go back and forth for the next 10 hours.
It's great. Right after I get done, I have to pack up this room and check out of this fucking hotel in like an hour. Tandrew says Winston is a dumb fat retard. Also, the American regime has more power when they're unchallenged on the world stage. Simple. K-Max McDonald says the debate became this question: does China's I guess so, according to him, does China's rise help American dissidents? Yes or no? If China becomes more powerful and America weaker, does this help or hurt Styx and Fuentes? Well, we kind of covered that, I think, a little bit. If anybody wants to weigh in real quick though on that again.
I think we covered that.
Yeah, I think we covered that pretty thoroughly. Destro over on Odyssey says, Styx, as a fan of both, the pulling of Parler by the American-based bottleneck of Amazon and AWS proves Nick's point. Nick's main point is that the American regime being given less space to operate means there's more space for American-based dissidents to have resources that may not be touched by USA.
The problem is that is not going to work in the sense of China, because if you're talking about tech, they've got an intranet. So we're not even interacting with them technologically. Maybe if it was some other country, maybe if India made a major rise, why don't you bet on India? India's pretty cool. They've got lots of good curried foods and everything. And they don't use gutter oil.
That's true.
But,
I'm all in for India. Shiva 2024.
Bruh. Well, Shiva's good. I like Shiva.
Actually, I like him too because he's been on the kill stream. Eustace Demonic says, if China becomes equal to or surpasses the U.S. in terms of overall global power, what's to say that instead of weakening its control domestically, the U.S. would turn inward? They wouldn't just turn inward and become worse. I guess that would be for Nick.
Very good point.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that, as far as we're concerned, that doesn't really happen in other countries. Russia and China and Iran, they're not turning inwardly. They're surrounded by a more powerful adversary, and they're all expanding outwards. So I think that, if the American regime is surrounded by China, or if China is upsetting the American regional hegemony, specifically in the Pacific, I don't know that America's going to say, okay, we're going to take it out on the dissidents. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that it's going to spread American resources more thinly. It's going to take more market share from them, more commerce from them. Imagine if America is no longer the global reserve currency. And imagine if the internet is bigger than just the American internet, controlled by American companies and under the jurisdiction of American-led system.
Well, it already is, but
that's not really. So that's a good thing.
Well, if you
significant threat.
The internet is way bigger than that. It's just that the English-speaking portion of it tends to tilt towards the U.S. and it's the Anglosphere because it's in English.
Well, what are the biggest companies in the world?
That has nothing.
Companies.
Well, the United States has like 400 million people in it. Most of these other countries with their own insular languages have a lot less. Have you seen the Hindi side of the internet at any point?
No,
it's massive. What I think that isn't the biggest YouTube channel still Hindi? I think wasn't it? The ones that surpassed PewDiePie.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Then it's not even based in the de facto English-speaking world. I realize in India, the language of commerce is English, but people there speak Hindi and day-to-day
Your
life.
argument that the internet isn't American-dominated is that an Indian channel is the biggest one on YouTube?
No, I'm just saying that's part of it. There are a lot of other. The Bollywood is a huge thing too, actually, when you think of it. By the way, they've got some great movies.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Nick.
I was going to say the top 5 biggest social media companies by user base are all American, I believe, with one exception. I think it's Facebook, followed by YouTube, followed by, I think it's WeChat, which is Chinese, right? Or I'm not even sure if that's it. I forget.
I know. I used to know the top 10. Dailymotion is actually on the top 20 list, and that's French. And Mail.ru, which is Russian. I believe there is a Taiwanese site as well. I think only about half of the top 50 are still American. It used to be like 45 of them or something.
Top 5, you got Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And
I think
Messenger.
Wouldn't Alphabet be top?
Alphabet's not a social media company.
Well, so okay, but I mean internet in general. Social media is not the whole internet.
Alphabet owns Google. Google owns YouTube. YouTube's the second biggest by user base.
And YouTube owns all of its users.
And the biggest companies in the world are American tech companies. I mean, Chinese ones are comparable, but the biggest ones are what? Amazon, Apple, Facebook.
Well, the Chinese companies would be bigger if they didn't have an intranet. That's the other thing. We couldn't do what we're doing in China because we wouldn't even be on the internet at large.
Yeah. Okay.
Anderson says, didn't the founding fathers get support from France because they were rivals to the British and supporting dissidents against the empire was beneficial to them? They did. Yes. We talked about that just a minute ago. Chaos X, thank you as well. He also says poo-poo. Jen with the big contribution. Thank you so much, Jen. Much appreciated for that. Good to see you. She says, Ethan showing off again with his ability to bring together great guests for an in-depth, important discussion. Good dialogue on a Thursday morning. Knocked it out of the park, bud. Much respect. Chat wins. Thank you for that, Jen. Very kind of you to say. And there's a few more, just a couple more. Thank you guys for being cool and staying for all these. Let's see. Winston says Israel gives a lot of support to China in that he messed that up. The Belt and Road Initiative, they sold U.S. military intel to China. They have investments in Chinese coal and oil. Isn't a fight against China a fight against Israeli cultural imperialism?
Yeah. No, absolutely it is. Israel is controlling Beijing. This is quite clear.
What? Israel's control? People say, well, China bought intel from Israel, so Israel owns Beijing. This is a non sequitur. And
Xi Jinping is going to have like Netanyahu there at any point.
Xi Jinping will have.
Jinping is going to go to the Wailing Wall.
He already did. I'm pretty sure.
I think he might have done that. Yeah.
But I mean, Well, then why are all the neocons anti-China? Because they are. All the Zionist Jewish. Look at like Ezra Levant from Rebel Media. That guy's obsessed with China, hates China, and they're all talking about China's going to take over Afghanistan and blah blah. Okay, so I mean the neocons.
So then, if that one stated opinion on ideologies of such import, why aren't you a leftoid? Since all of the Gang of Four morons in the House, they all support Palestine. So you should be on there. You should be praising AOC donkey face.
I do praise Ilhan Omar for saying awesome things about Israel. May Allah awaken the people so that they may see the evil doings of Israel. The United States. Yeah, that was awesome. I support that.
Let's see here.
I hope that Allah does that.
Polish American Groiper says, N-word Snowden. Hello, Nick.
Hey.
Winston Voxday, who's done extreme research into China, says that China, unlike other Asian nations, are similar in human biodiversity to Jews, and won't China become the new Israel? And I'm not okay. You've covered that, all right? Jesus. Okay. Tall Kevin 87 says, Styx, you say TikTok is Chinese because they made it. So in that sense, communism is Jewish because it was invented by various Jews. So now will you call it Jewish communism, not my Chi-Coms?
Well, that's not an internet site, but yeah, I mean, people that were Jewish were involved in the development of communism. Absolutely. I've never denied that.
Black Phillip says there's a small faction of dissident right-wing cope that stand the CCP in hopes of getting funding from China, sort of the opposite of how Wall Street funded the CCP and the Bolsheviks. Thoughts on this? Just a ridiculous pipe dream from nationalists or possibility?
I don't think it's necessarily like a possibility anytime soon, but it's just about how you think about it. I mean, I didn't come on the show and say, hey, China's going to help us out. I said, America hates us. The regime hates us. The regime will always hate us. If China has more market share, they don't hate us as much as the American regime does. So it's not.
No, they hate you more.
Okay.
Because you're an American.
SPLC, which is counting down the days of, America's 60% white, 50% white. China has more of a personal hatred for me than the Jewish system.
Yeah, I think that they do actually. Yeah,
absolutely not. That's just not true. And that's
I think they would put you up against the wall if they got the chance because it's one less competitor.
American dissidents are the principal opponent of the American regime, not the Chinese regime, in the same way that the Chinese dissidents are the antagonists to the Chinese regime, not the American regime. So, the point is like, it's not to say China's awesome. It's like, well, they're not our number one adversary, which is our own government, which has jurisdiction over us.
All right, now let's see. There was a couple more. Third Culture says, Nick's pragmatic argument has won me over more than Styx's ideological one. Thank you both, Nick and Styx. Thanks for hosting, Ralph. Appreciate that, Third Culture. Very kind contribution there. Godzilla 37 says, hey, Styx, was there ever a straw man you constructed that you didn't slay? Basement Wizard says, Styx is... I'm not reading that. Let me see. Hold on. I think I got all the rest of those from Odyssey. K-Max says... For Styx, what does the U.S. have in its favor going forward, say, in the next 10 to 20 years? And then, Nick, how do you see our next 10 to 20 years?
It has the ability to expand naval supremacy and the chance to reform its system from the ground up, as opposed to the Chinese system, which is incapable of that flexibility. It's only capable of central planning.
The next... Is this specifically about U.S.-China relations?
Well, I think it's just, what is China... let's see... how does Nick see our next 10 to 20 years going? I think he's just talking about maybe in the U.S.
Generally?
Yeah, just generally, yeah.
I don't know. A lot is going to change in the next 5 years, so I think it's highly unpredictable. I think that America's going to get worse in just about every way, unless there's some big disruptive event. I think we got a lot of economic problems. Like, we just doubled the money supply a year ago. You think that's not going to have consequences for the next 2 decades? That's going to be a big deal. Then obviously the changing demographics are going to be an issue, might ensure one-party Democrat rule, further dispossession of white people. And America's going to continue to lose prestige and power in the world in relative and absolute terms.
Jay Roxer says, Kathy Jew is sending Nick her power. I hadn't heard that name in a while. Let's see. Cowboy Man says, Styx said Nick created his own echo chamber and is not a threat to the system. That's not a shot at Cozy. He's going back on that. I don't know. We don't have to get into that. It's a debate. People talking shit. Whatever. Cara Tacos Eustace says, China #1, Styx re-educated soon.
Yes.
I go to chamber.
Soon.
Let's see. One more. Winston, don't say anymore. I'm not gonna ask you more. This is the last one. To be fair, Vaush, fat gay retard, also said he worries about Chinese imperialism in Afghanistan and the world. Styx, how is your view of China different than Vaush?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I'm not completely retarded, so that would be one thing. Vaush is like a broken clock in the sense that occasionally he says something that isn't completely moronic, and I guess that's one of the very few things that he said that makes sense. Although I don't give a shit about China's influence in Afghanistan, I really don't care what happens there. I'm only interested in Chinese influence over U.S. culture through its various subversions.
That's it. We're done with the super chats, which means we're almost done with the show, but I have to give these two epic gentlemen a chance to weigh in a little bit more if they want to add a little bit more to what they said today and then promote their stuff, of course. Since Nick let off, I'll let him lead off here as well and let Styx get the final word. Go ahead, Mr. Fuentes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's been a great debate. Thanks again, Ethan. Thanks again, Styx. I thought it was a lot of fun. Obviously, respect Styx. Love his content. Love his YouTube or his BitChute channel, I should say. We love Ethan. Odyssey is going great. For my closing statement, I would just say we have just got to get real about the threat of our own regime, and I see almost anything else as a distraction, a diversion. And anytime that I feel like I'm repeating what the State Department is saying, I have to question myself. And, for a long time, I was on board with the anti-China stuff and talking about they're this big threat and so on. But you see who's saying that. You see that that's being parroted in the mainstream media, in our national security apparatus. And if they're saying that and you're saying that, there should be cause for concern. The American regime has shown its true colors this past 12 months, if it hadn't before, between the election fraud, the Capitol, the new war on terror. They've made it very apparent and unambiguous who the real threat is to the American people, to the American nation, really to the entire world. And insofar as they are humiliated, embarrassed, insofar as their power is receding, I think that's a good thing. And if China is rising, if that's what's going to do it, then I think we have to be sober about what it might take to change the fundamental dynamic and make it possible for there to be any kind of real change, real regime change in America. So I guess I would say that my position is one of I not rationalizing the system. I'm completely anti-system. I'm in favor of disruption, and that's where my position on China comes from. I don't want to beat China. I don't think China's necessarily superior. I think that the principles underlying their regime are probably more sound than ours for now, but I see them as basically a tool, and we have to be open to looking at we have to be creative and open to looking at these kinds of possibilities and how changing dynamics in the world in unlikely ways may help us here domestically in America. So, but thanks again, everybody. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Nick. That was awesome. Appreciate the kind words. Styx Hexenhammer, go ahead, sir. Appreciate you coming on as well.
Yes, I'll close up by saying yes. Thank you, Ralph, for hosting us, and thank you, Nick, for being the debate partner here. I did have a lot of fun, a little bit of fireworks, get everyone going. Excellent. What I would say is this. Fundamentally, what Nick has said is that somehow things will improve for U.S. dissidents because of the expansion of China that may or may not happen over the coming near future. While I don't envision that as being particularly likely, I've predicted for some time that China is going to have economic problems. I do not believe that that would actually help people within the United States. And ultimately, at the end of the day, to put it bluntly, China is asshole. They endorse the same globalism that the Westoid globalists preach. It's just that they want the Chinese to have a little bit of a greater cut. There is no semblance of possibility of change within the Chinese system, which we do have in the US and similar systems. There is at least a process by which you can attempt to change the way in which things work. I would point out that a great deal of the excesses that have led to Nick Fuentes himself being abused are based, at least loosely, on the idea of like the Chinese social credit score system. China even going so far as to ban cryptocurrency mining, when cryptocurrency is arguably one of the greatest disruptors to the hegemonic power of the US or any other Western regime that we've seen in the last few decades. The power of people to speak out, to delve into innovation with regards to finances, again, blockchains, crypto, etc., that will change the system. We don't even disagree on the need for change. I think that Nick and myself, we could probably have a 2-hour discussion that would be entirely amiable if we talked about the need to reform and or destroy the current way in which the U.S. government does business. The difference is that I perceive it as an unpragmatic argument to believe that a foreign nation that doesn't even like anyone within the U.S. and sees us all as enemies or competitors is somehow magically going to help us by undermining the regime from without, because that undermining doesn't affect the domestic policies. It may affect the policies in third-party nations, but it doesn't help Nick Fuentes sitting there in the United States. Maybe China decides to sphere the Netherlands. Maybe all of a sudden, instead of being algorithmically demoted by YouTube for having wrong-think opinions about globalism or about CRT, maybe I'm in a gulag instead. It won't change anything for Nick Fuentes, and it won't change anything for many of you out there.
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. I think this might have been the best Bloodsports we ever had on the Kill Stream. Honestly, it was epic. And again, thanks from me to both of you, gentlemen. I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good weekend coming up.
All right. Thanks a lot. You too, friend.
Yeah, later on, man.
Yeah, peace out.
All right. So long.
All right, peace out, guys. Audience, thank you so much. I think you got a treat today. This was one of my favorites for sure. Worked out even better than I could have possibly hoped, quite frankly. This was, I knew it would be good, of course, but it was just unbelievably good. And I couldn't say enough good things about both those gentlemen. I thank them both again. Now, I got to go because I literally have to check out of this hotel room, not kidding, in 40 minutes. And if you saw this fucking room and what I got to pack, Jesus Christ. Oh, anyway. Thank you so much. The replay will be available exclusively on Odyssey when Killstream.tv comes back up, which it is coming back up. I told you 2 weeks. Today's actually 2 weeks. I'm hoping within the next couple of days. We'll see. But it is coming back. Killstream.tv. Many subscribers over there. I thank them as well. It'll be up there after. But while Killstream.tv's been down, Odyssey's been the exclusive home. So watch it there. Shout out to the restreamers over on Chill Stream More. Hit the fucking subscribe button. I'm going to fucking go. Forgot what I was going to say. Thank you guys for the major support today on the show as well. Much appreciated. Now, where is the... Is that it? That's it. That's it. Farewell! Bye-bye, Vegas! Well, later tonight. Bye-bye, Vegas.
I want a peaceful sunset, the kill stream. They trying to peacefully sunset the kill stream. The other night, friends, when I went to tune in, I saw the kill stream had been struck down again. Secret flags and reports, but we all know who's to blame. Can't afford the retort. Jihadi Jarbo's his name. Now you won't take down rap or all them channels you strike. So just delete your account. I'm sure there's folders to find. You can't peacefully sunset the kill stream. You never peacefully sunset the kill stream. You won't peacefully sunset the kill stream. You never peacefully sunset the kill stream. You won't peacefully sunset the kill stream.
One more for the live audience. The haters blown the fuck out again today. Nobody does what I do. When will you silly motherfuckers learn? And that goes for every single one of you motherfuckers. Suck my dick, bitch.
Step by step, all the happy saints go marching in. If a saint step out of line, you have to start again. Cause Jacob's golden ladder gets slippery at the top. And many a happy-go-lucky saint has made that long, long drop. If I'm late, don't wait. Go on without me. I may tarry a while. If I mean to know before I go, how come the devil smile? If I'm late, don't wait. Go on without me. I may tarry a while. 'Cause I mean to know before I go, how come the devil smile? Free from care, free from fear, the saints are trooping in. Children play all around the throne, innocent of sin. A trillion voices sing the name the mortal may not know. And heaven's walls too high to hear the trouble down below. If I'm late, don't wait.